we can try to say a little bit more and to analyze how critical thinking has been defined in modern times by the most important researchers in the field. Sure, you can say critical thinking or research about critical thinking has been going on for years and ages already. Socrates, in a sense, was the first to develop this in philosophy 2,000 years ago. But in more recent times, we can say that American philosopher John Dewey, who's a pragmatist, is probably the father of critical thinking, a contemporary critical thinking. So according to Dewey, he said, active, persistent and careful consideration of any belief or supposed formal knowledge in the light of the ground that supports it and the further conclusion to which it tends constitutes reflective thought. So you can see that for John Dewey, essentially critical thinking is something that is related to an activity that is, so it goes back to practice. This practice has to be persistent and is a form of knowledge that is based on evidence, so based on empirical evidence. This definition was somehow refined by Glaser in the 40s. According to him, critical thinking calls for a persistent effort to examine any belief or supposed formal knowledge in the light of the evidence that supports it. This definition is very similar to Dewey's definition, but it introduces an element I think that is important. The idea that critical thinking is an attitude of being disposed to consider in a thoughtful way the problems and subjects that come within the range of one's experience. The next definition is a bit more interesting and innovative and was given by Robert Ennis, who was one of the fathers of the modern critical thinking tradition. And according to him, critical thinking is reasonable, reflective thinking that is focused on deciding what to believe or to do. Here there is an important element of innovation, if you like, and is the fact that for Ennis is the first one who introduced the element of decision-making in critical thinking. So the critical thinking is all about decision-making. That's something that it should be stressed and emphasized. Another definition comes from this guy, Richard Paul, who says, well, critical thinking is that mode of thinking about any subject, content or problem which the thinker improves the quality of his own thinking by skillfully taking charge of the structure inherent in thinking about and imposing intellectual standards upon them. So the crucial idea here is the idea that critical thinking is a form of metacognition, which we already hinted in the previous section. So it's a form of cognition that involves about thinking. So it requires other kind of knowledge. It requires, for instance, reading, knowing how to read, knowing how to write, and so on. Okay, and finally, the last definition was provided by Fisher and Shriver in 1997, and according to them, critical thinking is skilled and active interpretation and evaluations of observation and communication, information and argumentation. So according to them, critical thinking is somehow a skill that requires certain standards of clarity, of relevance. Now this idea of critical thinking as being a skill is something that is quite popular in the literature nowadays, but as we will see later on, it's also a bit problematic because, well, we will discuss this later. You will see there is a nice quote that I would like to show you. So essentially the idea is that it's not just a skill, but you need the right attitude, and teachers also need the right attitude. Okay, so having reviewed these definitions of critical thinking, we can start by saying, we can conclude this section by saying what critical thinking allows us to do. Well, surely it allows to recognize problems, to find workable means for meeting those problems, to gather and marshal pertinent information, to recognize unstated assumptions and values, to comprehend and use language with accuracy, clarity and discrimination, as well as to interpret data, to appraise evidence and evaluate statements. But critical thinking allows us to recognize the existence of logical relationship between propositions, to draw warranted conclusions and generalization, to put to test the generalization and conclusion at which we arrive, to reconstruct one's patterns of belief on the basis of wider experience, and to render accurate judgment about specific things and qualities in everyday life. So you can see critical thinking is quite a powerful tool. It's quite useful in our everyday life. Okay, so what it means to be critical then? Well, obviously being critical, as emphasized in the video, it doesn't mean just be negative, so finding flaws in other positions. It's more about well, in the academic world, you can say that it's more about being fully informed and capable of supporting in-depth analysis and assessment. So why is critical thinking important? Well, it is important for a number of different reasons. It is important for you students, for some of you students, because essentially it affects your academic success. The more critical in the right way you are, the more likely you are to get a better score when you do an exam. The more critical, and this is in an ideal world, it's not always like that, unfortunately, you are, and the more likely you are to get a better job after university. It always depends. But it could
not in this country.
well, no, it doesn't matter. Here, it's always the same. You know? So I wouldn't make it culture specific. It's more this is more a universal thing. You know? If you look at who's president in certain countries, so it doesn't matter. And so, most importantly, why you should study critical thinking? Because it affects directly your life and gives you freedom of judgment over a wide range of topics. An example, for instance, this example, the Iraqi war. The Iraqi war, I choose this example because nowadays it's something like accepted by everyone, almost everyone, I would say. So in the Iraqi war, you could say that both Blair and Bush lacked critical thinking, and I'm putting things gently because actually there was a geopolitical design to that war, so it's not that they lacked critical thinking, they knew full well what was going on, they just did it because they had some reasons to do it. But assume, and by the way, I'm not sure if you are aware, but both Bush and Blair have been recently condemned by the International Court of Kuala Lumpur as war criminals. So both Bush and Blair actually cannot travel in certain countries. Switzerland, for instance, they threatened to arrest Bush a couple of years ago. In fact, he didn't travel to Switzerland as a result. So just saying. And if you want to follow up on this, there is nice work done by Francis Boyle, who is an American jurist, who is the one responsible for prosecuting both Blair and Bush. Okay, so but let's assume that in that case they lacked critical thinking. So they lacked critical thinking in a trivial way because they didn't assess all the evidence that was available at that time. For instance, in 2003, in February 2003, Saddam had provided the number of hundreds of scientists to interview that he claimed had been involved in the destruction of mass weapons of mass destruction. But neither the United States nor Britain looked at this, and as a result, hundreds of thousands of children, women and men died. Conservative estimates are between 500,000 and 1 million people died as a result of that war. So critical thinking is important. But it's important also to look at it from another perspective, for instance. The journalists are normally one of the jobs that is supposed to control politicians, in a sense, right? Had the journalists done their job at that time, at least in the Western world, well, they would have probably investigated things critically. They would have had power to stop that war, in some sense. So, you see, critical thinking is very important at all levels, not only for ourselves to find a better job, but also for our society. So, you could argue that everywhere, masters and governments don't want people to be critical because they know that critical society is much more difficult to control than an uncritical society. Okay, so how can we become critical? Open University, which is a university in the UK, did a nice graphic, I think, to highlight the steps that one requires to underline the process of critical thinking. And these are the steps, which we can summarize very briefly. So the whole process starts when the subject takes in the information. So reads a book, a newspaper, come across a certain piece of information on the internet, anything really. Listen to a newspaper, listen to a TV, or anything really. Upon receiving this information, the subject starts to comprehend the key points, the assumption and the evidence and the argument presented. Having done this, he then starts to analyze these arguments. So he starts to examine how the key components of what he just heard fits together. He then starts to compare what he just came across with what he knows already or what he's been reading in the meantime. And in doing that, he tries to synthesize this different position into a well-defined argument. So it's trying to bring together different sources to serve an argument or an idea, and so it's trying to make connections between these different pieces of information. Having done that, it starts to evaluate the worth of this idea, so by looking at the evidence, for instance, that supports it, and he eventually applies it to certain questions, assignments, and projects, which runs the next step, which is justification, which on the basis of this application, he then goes on to make general claim about his position. So that's essentially a good way to summarize the process underlying critical thinking, which is also, by the way, very helpful for writing academic essay. If you should always follow this kind of 10 to 8 steps scale. Okay, so that's more or less the first part of the talk. Now, the second part of the talk, which is about teaching critical thinking to students.